Have you ever needed to collect repeatable information within your form? Maybe you need some line items or dependents, something that you want to ask a variable number of times, could be one or more within the form, and you don't want to clutter up your main form? Well, this is exactly where a subform comes in. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down subforms as if we're taking the perspective of a health insurance form where people are adding dependents. But the example that we're using is just that, and you can repurpose the subform for so many different ideas or types of forms. So if learning more about subforms is of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth, and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission here to help you unlock the full potential of no-code tools so that you can build applications to streamline your processes without requiring any code at all. One of our favorite no-code tools is Fillout. It is one of the most robust and advanced form software out there right now, and it comes at a really affordable price as well. So we recommend this to so many of our clients that we work with on a regular basis. In this video, as I said, we're going to be taking a look at the subform feature. I'm going to show you what it is exactly and when you would want to use it. But before we get into that, I first want to invite you to join me for some free templates. If you're new to no code, I've put together templates in one of my favorite database tools, Airtable, and these will allow you to get up and running very quickly using Airtable, thanks to our templates with the associated videos that accompany them. You can grab those templates absolutely free at gapconsulting.io/templates. But without further ado, let's hop on into my screen. Here I am inside of Fillout, and I am building a form. I'm actually building this from a template. This is a template that Fillout makes readily available on their website. So if you want to follow along with me, I encourage you to do so. And if you use the affiliate link that we will include with this video, it's a great way for you to show some love back to the channel. So here I am in the form, and you'll notice that I've got three main pages. Down on the bottom of the form, we have the info page, a details page, and a declaration page, and then the final submission page, right? Again, this is just an example form, but it shows you all the different capabilities that Fillout makes available. So in our form, the first component here is asking for the name and the policy number of the insured. We're asking for a contact person, phone number, and email address. And then we're going to get over to our next page, which I've done some modifications to here, and we want to ask for dependents. Well, how many dependents does somebody have? It is variable, right? It could be 0, it could be 10. And so when we are collecting this information for everyone who submits the health insurance form, the amount of information that we're collecting about the dependents can be variable. It could be 1, it could be more than 1. So in our case, what we're going to do is use a subform here, and this is going to allow us to link up to this subform so that people can very easily add additional dependents to the list here. In order to utilize a subform, we actually have to create a completely separate form to this one in our Fillout account. In order to do that, we can go to the home page. I'm just going to open this up in another tab so that I can cycle between these two different forms. And I am going to make a new Fillout. So this is a new form. I'll start from scratch, and I can choose a theme here. I can also use AI to create a new theme for me, or I can perfectly go in and customize this theme to look exactly like my original form so that people don't even realize they're within a secondary form within the original. But we'll get to that in a moment. For now, I'm just going to choose the light theme and we'll create the form. That way I can come in and start building. So on this form, I'm asking for dependents. And so I will call this the dependent form. And we'll continue. This is just the name of the form. You can always change that later. And this is a very easy form builder. I can drag and drop all the fields here on the left-hand side and drop them into my form here. So I might start with a short answer field, drag it over here, and I'll say dependent's name. And we might collect the dependent's phone number as well. We have all kinds of different fields. And if you're not really sure the different fields that Fillout offers, you can, of course, scroll down here or search. So I will look for phone. And sure enough, I have the contact info phone number. Notice that I can put this field right next to the dependent's name, so I can go 2 by 2 here as I'm filling this out and put multiple fields next to each other. I can also make these fields required if I would like to. And here I'll just rename this to be the dependent's phone number. Let's add a couple more fields to our subform before we actually connect it to the main form. We want to add what is the relationship to you, the insured, so we can list out things like children or elderly that we take care of, things of that nature. And then we can also bring in another field that says, hey, let's have requirements on age. So we can ask what the age of the dependent is. So let's go ahead and make these selections here. I will use a number field for the age, of course, and I'll drop that in here and I'll say dependent's age. And then we will also do the relationship. And for this, we're going to use a select field. So let's look up, we have a drop down, which will work just fine. So for this, I'm going to say dependent relationship to insured. And let's also make all of these questions required. Over here on the right-hand panel, under the basic settings, we can toggle every single field to be a required field. And we can also make it so that the dependent's age shows up after the relationship here. We'll make this required as well. And we can do the same with phone number if we wanted to, and the name. Okay, so these are the 4 different fields that we've now put onto our subform. I want to highlight that we can actually use logic inside of our subform as well. So for example, a dependent, if they are our child, we might only allow up to the age of 26 to be added to the insured's policy. If a child for the insured is over 26, we might say, hey, you're not allowed to add this person. So we can actually include this logic here inside of our subform or in our main form, depending on where we wanted the logic to perform. So for us, let's give us a couple of different options for this relationship. Let's say option 1 is child. And maybe option 2 can be an elderly person that we take care of. You get the idea, right? We can add different options here as to the different types of relationships. So we can add that here, and then we can set up that logical component that says, if a certain thing is picked here, then we can have rules here on the dependent's age. In order to build the logic, we can go into the dependent's age field again, and on the validation component, we will set up a validation pattern. So we can use regex, we can use none, or we can do a condition. Conditions are easiest, so let's set that up here. And we'll set up a rule that the field is valid if the question here about the dependent's relationship to the insured equals child and simultaneously the dependent's age is less than, we can say less than or equal to 26, or whatever different rules apply in your country or region. And so what happens then in this form, if somebody were to select that they wanted to list a dependent as a child, but the dependent's age is 28, this is an invalid entry then, and it will not accept it in our form. Now that we've set up our subform, we want to go ahead and publish this. Sometimes I forget this step, and it's the simplest one. So let's make sure to publish in the upper right corner. Then we can go back to our original form, which I had open in a different table. So we want to add this subform to the main form. Remember here, as a quick refresher, we have the main info page where people give the information about them, the policy holder. We have the declaration page where they're signing off and saying, yes, I'm signing this and validating this to be true. But also we have this second page kind of in the middle where we want them to be able to link to multiple dependents. And so rather than cluttering up this form and having a bunch of hidden fields and stuff, we're creating the subform that they can submit to us multiple times. First, we need to connect that subform here. So we have 2 different forms, the subform that we created separately and now our main form. Let's go ahead and find the subform option and we will add it to this page. So I'll select subform and we can say add your dependents here. And over here on the right-hand side of the subform, it's going to ask us to connect this subform. So we have all of our different components, the different pieces that we've made, the different forms that are in our account, and we can add them here as subforms. And for us, if you recall, we named our subform dependents. So I'll make that selection here, and it's going to ask us what that main field is. We're going to go with the dependent's name. That's how we're going to identify the different dependents. And we can make this required if we'd like. We can also shorten it, make it half width. But the really cool part here is actually adding data validation to the subforms. So we can require a minimum number of submissions. So for example, we could say, you have to list at least one dependent, for example. Or more likely, we might have a maximum number of submissions based on our policies. So you could say, hey, look, you might have more, but you can only list your first 3 dependents as an example. So this way, people, when they use that subform, will be capped out at creating 3 new dependent records that are attached to their original form. Now that we've got this set up, we can go ahead and publish this form as well. Remember, we're publishing each form, and this is the URL or the link for the form. So we can take this out and actually submit something against this form as a test. So let's see. I will go with myself here. I'll just say Gareth, keep it simple. Policy number 123. Maybe this contact person is not different. Again, all of these fields could be made required, but I haven't required them here. Let's get into the subform part though. This is where we want to take a look. I can expand the dependents and add my dependents here. I can create a dependent. This is opening up the other form. Notice that the theme here is a little bit different in terms of the coloring and how this form shows up, but these fields are required. I could, of course, change the theme if I want to perfectly mimic the original form, and people would never even realize that they're taken into a form within the form. This is a really strong selling point for the subform, because the other way to solve this would be to create a form that would include a link, and people would be in one form, working in there, click the link, which would open a second form, and it's just a very disjointed feeling. If they wanted to submit that subform multiple times, they'd have to click that link multiple times and open up multiple items. The beauty of the subform is they don't even realize they've been taken somewhere else. As far as they're concerned, this can be the exact same form process. So I'll add one dependent here. I'll name one Evan. We'll make a phone number here. And let's go ahead and test out our validity rules that we added. So if a child is more than 26, I think we said, what happens? So I'll pick a dependent's age of 30, and we cannot submit this information because it doesn't meet the validity rules. So I can remove this to 24, let's say, and this now created that subform entry. So this is where that main name comes into play, because as we selected when we built ours, we were using the name of the dependent, and that makes sense here because now that shows up. I can add additional folks, additional dependents here, and let's go with Yvette. Same things here. We can put in whatever data we would like. We'll go child again and 12. And you get the idea. We have created now multiple dependents inside of the submission of our one original form. I can go to the next page here. I can add my signature, and we can add the date signed, and we are good to go. This is now submitted, and we've collected all of that information, not just the high-level form information, but also the information for the subforms, the dependents that were created. Now, this is all really cool, but you can do even more inside of Fillout. The subform is kind of the first step, but let's take a look at some of the more advanced features that we can now use in tandem with the form submissions. So back inside of Fillout here, first thing I want to bring our attention to is integrating. We can add integrations natively between Fillout and a number of different data sources. So we can send and create contacts automatically in MailChimp. We can add or create records in SmartSuite, Google Sheets, Notion, and of course, one of our favorites, Airtable. Another option here is an integration with Slack. So you can actually build workflows inside of Fillout so that when certain things happen here inside of Fillout, when you receive form submissions, for example, and you can get granular and say only specific forms or specific submissions like that consist of, as an example, 3 dependents, well, then you could trigger an automation to send a Slack message or an email or all kinds of different integrations that are templatized here. We can use these templates, or we can create our own blank workflow when a form is submitted, just as you would in a standard automation tool. Create an action step. You can branch it out. You can create an AI action, communicate with Microsoft Teams, send text messages, etc. Lots of different options here for when we receive form submissions, but that of course is not the only trigger here. If we go back and create another blank workflow, We can do this based on events because Fillout also has scheduling. We can do things when a form is abandoned, etc. So there are a lot of possibilities here, of course, as I think you can see. And just as a quick recap, doing this subform is just a cleaner, neater experience for your users and will make it easier for people to give you the information you need in your forms. Now, of course, in our example, as I said, we were looking at it from the dependence on a health insurance policy, but there are so many different use cases for this. Things like tracking line items in expenses, adding tasks against projects. There are so many different times where you would want to create one or more sub items inside of a form. So if you have that need, this is the software feature that you are looking for. I hope you got a ton of value from this video. Of course, if you did, we would love it if you could subscribe and thumbs up on the video. And if you have questions we didn't answer, swing by our website. We have a ton of resources available for you there. That's it for this one. Of course, most importantly, my friend, keep on building.